guys, welcome back to the channel. This is your host, Christopher Corey with Shadows Techland. So I've done a lot of videos on Plex, transcoding, what you need to know in order to build your own Plex server. So at this point in time, hopefully you probably already have your server built, so let's go over Plex itself. Now, obviously, there's other alternatives that you can use. I'm not saying that you can't use them. This is just what I've used for a very long time, and I do quite like it. I'm not being paid to say this. It's just a service that I do go ahead and believe in and have used for a long time, been a long-standing customer, so wanted to go over Plex itself. Now, with Plex, there's a couple things to keep in mind. There is the free version, and there is a subscription-based version. One of the big differences between free versus paid, well, a couple of them. With free, you are able to only get 30-second previews of Tidal, which is a music service that they go ahead and outsource with that they use. So you won't be able to get as much content that way compared to the subscription-based version for Plex, which is what I currently use myself. Another big one, of course, is going to be the live TV that they do provide that you can use. However, in order to use that, you do have to use a secondary service that you need to go ahead and tie in with Plex in order to get the live TV into your server. Now, of course, how it is that you get that I'm not going to go over because that is kind of a gray area of what's legal and what's not legal. I will go ahead and leave that up to you guys to do your own research, because that is not something I will be going over today. Now, with Plex server, there is a couple different ways, well, actually quite a few different ways that you can install it, depending, of course, of your needs, how much content you have, and what power you are needing. There's definitely quite a few different ways that you can go ahead and install it. You can do Windows, which of course is the easiest. Do keep in mind you will need the resources for whatever Windows, whether it's server, Windows 10, whatever the case may be. You'll have to have resources for Windows, plus Plex itself, so definitely go ahead and keep that in mind. There is Linux, of course, but that install is not necessarily as straightforward. Depending on, of course, your familiarity with Linux will determine on how easy or difficult that is for you. And then, of course, you can go ahead and install it on like a NAS-based system, whether that's Synology, QNAP, Unraid, or FreeNAS. They do have their own community application stores that you can go ahead and get the Plex Media server from. Now, for my personal server that I do use, which we will not be going into today for privacy reasons, I have Unraid using the BinHex community application plugin Docker container, and that's how I go ahead and run my Plex. Now, what I'll be using today is just a Windows-based system with a Windows-based Windows 10 Pro system with Plex Media Server installed, and then I'm going to go ahead and go over that with you today. Now, do keep in mind, in order to install a Plex Media Server, you do have to have administration rights for installing software, depending on if this is on domain, network, whatever your case and setup may be. Keep that in mind. It's a fairly straightforward install. It will go ahead and install it. It will install a couple dependencies that may possibly be needed that it will go ahead and grab for you, and then once you do that, it will bring you to a welcome screen, which is where you were able to go ahead and click on a couple options. The first being what name you want to give your Plex Media server. Also, do you want to be able to share it out on the internet? If you do want to go ahead and share it out on the internet, you will need to port forward 32400, depending on, of course, what router, firewall, etc. that you may be using. You will need to look up those instructions from your manufacturer in order to take care of that. And that is only if you are going to be sharing your content outside of your network. Besides that, if you're just doing an internal, you don't have to forward any ports. Now, I do already have this installed, so let's go ahead and take a couple looks at a few things. I'll be using the Goliath, which is the test case for you guys. That way we can go ahead and look at a few things. Prometheus, of course, is my personal server, and then I have access to a couple friend servers that they have given me access to view their content, but we will not be looking at that. So it installs music and photos as a category. That's just default. What you'll go ahead and do is you'll click on this plus sign. Pretty straightforward. Movies, TV, music, photos, whatever the case may be. You'll browse for your content, and then you will go ahead and however it is you decide to organize it. Personally, myself, since I share with friends and family members, some people have kids, some people don't, I kind of break my content out based off of anime, kids TV, kids movies, normal movies that myself would watch. And then, of course, that way, obviously how it is that you break it out, that's clearly up to you. Now, one of the things you will need to keep in mind, depending on how much content you have and where you have gotten your content from, you may possibly need to go ahead and rename it. That way Plex will pick it up correctly. If you do have any issues with that, one of the software that I highly recommend is FileBot Renamer. It is an amazing piece of software, very quick, very simple to use, very cheap. I do have a video for that in my library that you can go ahead and look at if you wanted to get more information on that. So we'll go ahead and we'll look at a couple options here. Now this is going through the first time install, so that's why this looks black. It will look slightly different if you go ahead and refresh and then go ahead and log into Plex. Once you've created your free account, and then go ahead and it will look like it normally would. This is just looks black because this is the first time install and the first time you've logged into your Plex server account and the first time you're setting up your server, so do keep that in mind. Now, one of the things that you can go ahead and do is there's a couple ways that you can go ahead and set up Plex. You can do what's called a home managed group. But in order to set up a home managed group, one of the things that I find as a drawback is you have to send everyone a link of your primary account. And that primary account is your account that is your administrator account for Plex. That's something that I terribly don't like doing myself. If personally myself, what I chose to do is go ahead and create a user account. So you'll go here, and then you'll say friends, you say share library. That goes ahead and creates a share of what it is that you want to give them access to. So what folders, what media, and then what restrictions do you want to allow them to download. Now, in order for them to download your media, that is something that requires a Plex pass as well. Without that, you will not be able to have that option. And then, of course, you can do restrictions like age, rating, things of that nature, depending on how it is that you want to break it out. I have separate sections for my media due to the fact that, you know, some of my friends and family members have kids, don't exactly want them running into like a horror show or something of that nature and having nightmares for the next week. So I just went ahead and broke things out. Of course, it's completely dependent on how it is that you guys want to go ahead and do that. And then underneath the dashboard, whatever is playing, and if you are sharing out to a bunch of devices on your network or with friends or family member over the internet, in order to share with friends and family member over the internet, you do have to have a Plex Pass subscription as well. And then it'll show you the bandwidth, how much CPU and RAM you're using, and it also will go ahead and give you information regarding what is being played, what it's being played on, and if it's being transcoded or things of that nature. Alerts would be like if anything is being played, what's being played, etc. Conversions, basically what that is you can set up an optimized version for a certain device type. For example, like let's say you're going on a trip, you can go ahead and downgrade your content for, let's say, like a tablet. So you can go ahead and do 10, 20 movies. I want to convert to this file type, this size. We'll go ahead and do that, and then it will download it to a certain folder on your desktop, and then you can go ahead and grab those and put them on your device. Or just go ahead and another thing that's really cool with conversions is you can convert for that file type, and then underneath Plex itself, you can go in there and say, oh, I want to play it for the converted file type. So like, let's say I did Resident Evil, you would see a Resident Evil movie sitting right in here that you could go ahead and click on and play at that converted rate. General, basically what version, what account is signed in, and then debugging options, what you want to go ahead and do, like let's say if you want Plex Pass downloads, if you had a Plex subscription, or if you wanted to have downloads and installs done at a certain time for the Plex updates. This is where you would go if you wanted to, first of all, enable remote access. So you would first have to enable that. It would tell you your private IP address for that particular computer, your public address, and then this port right here that you would need to forward in order to go ahead and have it accessed over the internet. Now, another thing you can do too is you can run a speed test. So as an example, currently I have 400 down, 20 up. I have mine set to a complete maximum of about 70% of my upload. That way I have enough upload for myself if I wanted to do streaming or things of that nature, so it's not completely killing my internet, and I have bandwidth left to do what I want to do at home. Now, underneath agents, basically what that would be is what agents are used in order to pull the metadata, which is basically like the cover art, box art, things of that nature, so you can see what it is that you're actually looking for when you're trying to play a movie or TV or things of that nature. So personal media would be if you upload like family videos, things of that nature, maybe for like a business, something of that nature. Plex movies. Now, of course, this is under movies. One of the things that you'll find when you run into issues with uploading large amount of content is you don't have the correct agents in the correct order. So what you want to go ahead and do is you want to make sure IMDb is the first. So when you go under movie database, you want to make sure that the movie database is first. Plex movie is last, and that will help you when it comes to finding clip art and having issues. And of course, like I said already previously in this video, if you have issues and it's not finding the correct content, chances are your movie is not named correctly, and you will need to take care of that. Now, underneath library, there's quite a few options. One of the things that I recommend doing, so I have less hassle on my end, is you can go ahead and enable scan my library automatically. So as soon as I have media that gets imported into my Plex server, you'll notice that and it'll go, oh, hey, there's media here. I need to go ahead and add it to Plex. And then you can also set up run a partial scan when changes are being detected. Now, another side of that coin also that I just thought of too, if you are uploading a crap ton of media into Plex, like let's say a whole entire hard drive or library, I would turn these two settings off, because as you're going ahead and adding the media, it's scanning and scanning and scanning and scanning and scanning repeatedly, trying to upload everything to Plex that you're adding. So I would go ahead and turn these two settings off, upload all your stuff, get it all up there and taken care of, and then go ahead and turn these back on. And at that point in time, you would be able to go ahead and, depending on, of course, how much crap that you're uploading, will determine on how long it takes to scan and add it. Also, of course, depending on where your Plex server is and how much resources, etc., that you have. Plugins, if you want to do like auto detect, if you want to enable iTunes plugin to go ahead and tie in with your Plex library. Underneath network, you can go ahead and set up custom certificates, encryption keys. You can have Plex only enabled to be used under certain networks. You can also go ahead and set up to where it doesn't auto log in this section. Let's say, for an example, if the Plex server service goes down itself for like an outage or maintenance or something of that nature, you would still be able to view your content and not have any issues with it. So you can set up restrictions, custom URLs that are allowed without authentication, things of that nature. Now the transcoder section, basically, really quick rundown transcoding, basically what that is. Transcoding is where a video that you have is not able to be played on a specific client. Some older clients, like let's say they don't have the ability to play 1080p and you're trying to play a 1080p movie, it will downscale it to 720p or whatever that client is capable of. Now there's a couple ways that you can go ahead and do transcoding, depending on, of course, your use case. You can do CPU transcoding, like let's say some of the CPUs for like the i7 and Xeons. They have on the Intel side what's called QuickSync, and you would need to, of course, look up your CPU and see what it's capable of. AMD has something as well, but I don't remember what the terminology is off the top of my head, so you would need to look into that. And then, of course, there's two other options. You can use RAM, so if you have, like, say, a lot of RAM in your system, you can go ahead and use one of the free tools that are out there in order to take a specific amount of your RAM and go ahead and use that for just transcoding. Now that does work pretty well. You don't need to have a lot unless you have just a giant amount of transcoding going because you share with a very large amount of people. I mean, the most that I used was like 8 gigs, and I never went through that because once the movie is done, it goes ahead and dumps it out. So then you have that memory free in order to use it for the next transcode, etc., etc., etc. Now, the other way that you can go ahead and do, which is what I use personally myself, is GPU transcoding. So you can take now at this time of making this video, NVIDIA only, AMD video cards are not set up in order to be able to do GPU transcoding. So you're taking basically your video card and using that to transcode videos back and forth for clients that don't have the capability to load at a certain resolution and bitrate. Now, another thing you can do is you can have Plex automatically select audio and subtitle tracks, depending on, of course, what region, country, etc. you're in. You can do what you prefer for audio, subtitles, and then, of course, preferred subtitles in what language. I don't use this particular option. I go through Open Subtitles, which is a free service and account that you can go ahead and set up on OpenSubtitles.com, I do believe. Don't hold me to that, I could be mistaken. And then once you do that, you go into here, and then you would go back to Agents in here. Click on the gearbox, you would put in your Open Subtitles username and password, and then the subtitle languages that you want to go ahead and use. And if that movie has subtitles or Open Subtitles does, it will go ahead and automatically play that with whatever settings that you do choose. And then, of course, you can set up Plex to be a DLNA local media server as well if you would like. That is an option that you can do. Scheduled tasks, basically it's just cleanups. So it will clean up your database, refresh media, update during maintenance. So you can set up like a certain time that a lot of people aren't on in order to do updates. And then, of course, you can set up extras for, like, let's say when you're at the theater, you know, the previews of upcoming movies, things of that nature. You can set that up here as well. You can do pre-rolls too, which are kind of neat. They're basically little screens that are created, little video clips that start before your media, and those are pretty cool as well, and you can do custom ones with that. And that's pretty cool. And then, of course, libraries. Pretty straightforward. To add a library, you just click, literally, add a library. Movies, TV, and then the folder, wherever it is that it's located, whether it's on the computer, server, whatever the case is, NAS. Now you can have the server and the content being in two different locations. It really just, there's a lot of options you could do. And then of course live TV, you can set up a Plex live DVR. Now of course, like I said, you would set it up here. It is free once you do have a Plex Pass subscription, and then you would have to link that in with a third-party service in order to bring the content in. That is something you will need to look into for legal and privacy reasons. I won't be going over those options. And then of course troubleshooting, you can go ahead and clean up your databases, your bundles, and things of that nature. And then the console basically would be whatever is currently going on. You'll see that particular task right here. And that's basically the long and short of it. One of the other cool things that is pretty nice from Plex is, as you can see here, Plex has brought in to where you were able to watch movies for free. Now, those movies are limited. They're not around forever. The database and the movie library does rotate often. So if you wanted to watch something, you can definitely go through and do that. And that is free content that is available to you as well, besides what you already previously have added to your particular server. Hopefully that will go ahead and clear up a lot of questions that you guys have about Plex. If you have any other questions, definitely feel free to reach out to me on my social media, which will be linked in the description. I will also leave a link in the description for free versus paid. That way you guys can make your own decision on what you guys do need. Otherwise, you're definitely welcome to go ahead and join my Discord, and I do stream on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I appreciate your guys' time, and have a good day. Thanks, guys.